Hi everyone and welcome to Module 2 of Medical Terminology. This week our focus is going to be on the topics of the integumentary and musculoskeletal systems. So again, like I talked about in my Module 1 announcement video, I'm going to spend the time during these videos just to go over the content from your book itself. You will still be responsible for making sure that you do the interactive activities as well as looking at the study guide prior to taking your quiz and doing any homework assignments for this week. So let's get into it. So we're going to start with Chapter 4, and this week Chapter 4 is talking about the body structure. So this chapter will help you to understand the structure and function organizations of the body. It will also help you to understand the terms that are used to describe anatomical positions, planes of the body cavities, and quadrants. You'll also discuss diseases and conditions associated with the disease process, as well as the medical, surgical, and diagnostic procedures. The body is made up of several levels of structure and function. The first level, at the smallest structural functional unit of life, is called a cell. Cells have many shapes and sizes, but they share three main parts: a cell membrane, a cytoplasm, and a nucleus. Cytology is the study of the body at the cellular level. A group of cells that perform a specialized group of activities or specialized activity in general are called tissues. There are more than 200 cell types, and they compose four major tissues of your body: epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous tissue. When you have a group of tissues that work together, and so two or more tissues that work together, they form an organ. And when you get a variety of organs working together, they make a system. So gastrosystem and pulmonary system is a group of organs working together. And then at its highest level of organization, we have an organism, and that is a complete living, capable entity, independent of existence, but it is made up of different systems working together. This chapter also talks about what we call the anatomical position. The anatomical position is the body standing erect or upright and is face forward. Their arms are at their side and their palms are facing forward. So sometimes when we're talking about specific body planes, body positions, we start at this anatomical position. The most common planes that we see in our body are called the mid-sagittal or median. This will divide the body into right and left halves. So if we're looking at our body system here, we have right here, this is mid-sagittal. It goes right down the middle and it divides left and right halves. We also have a coronal or frontal body plane that will divide the body into anterior and posterior positions. So this right here is the coronal or frontal plane. It divides into anterior, which is the front, and posterior, which is the back. And the last one we have is a transverse or horizontal plane, and that will divide the body into superior and inferior positions. So the transverse plane is right here. It divides into superior, which is upper, and inferior, which is lower. Now these body planes create body cavities, and these spaces are within the body that help us to protect, separate, and support internal organs. Each of the two main cavities consists of two smaller cavities. So the first cavity we have is the dorsal cavity. The dorsal cavity is what we consider the posterior or back cavity, and that will include the cranial and spinal nerves, and cranial and spinal cavities. We also have a ventral or anterior cavity. So the ventral cavity is the front side, and it will include the thoracic and abdominal pelvic cavities. In the abdominal pelvic category and cavity, we have what we call quadrants and regions. These are used to describe the location of many abdominal and pelvic organs more easily. The abdominal pelvic cavity is divided into 4 quadrants with 2 imaginary lines, and they form a cross in the midsection of the lower torso. The quadrants are called upper and lower, so obviously upper, lower, or in this case, upper, lower. And then they're divided into left and right. So this is the right upper quadrant, this is the left upper quadrant, right lower quadrant, left lower quadrant. Then there are regions, and they are used to primarily identify the location of underlying body structures and visceral organs. Here there are 9 regions, and they are divided into 3 parts: the hypochondriac, which is up top, the umbilical, which is in the middle, and the inguinal, which is in the lower region. And then for each of them, they have a right, middle, and left. So right hypochondriac, middle hypochondriac, left hypochondriac, right umbilical, right middle umbilical and left umbilical, right inguinal, middle inguinal, left inguinal. There are terms that are used to locate the position of structures, surfaces, and regions of the body, but they are always in relative to the anatomical position. So it is important that you know things like adduction and abduction, medial and lateral, superior and inferior, proximal and distal, anterior and posterior, parietal and visceral, prone and supine, inversion and eversion, palmar and plantar, and then superficial and deep. You can find all of these in Chapter 4 and Table 4-5. We're going to move on to our next chapter, which is going to talk about Chapter 5, the integumentary system. And the integumentary system refers to the skin and the accessory organs, things such as hair, nails, and glands. The skin covers and protects all outer surfaces of the body and performs many vital functions like the sense of touch. The skin consists of 2 layers, one that we call the epidermis and one that we call the dermis. Epidermis is the outermost layer of skin. Break that down and you get the prefix epi, E-P-I, which means outer, and dermis, which means skin. Dermis is the second layer of skin that lies, again, just under that epidermis. The accessory organs of the skin, like I stated before, are the glands, hair, and nails. Glands will play an important role in defending the body against disease and maintaining homeostasis. There are 2 important glands that are located in the dermis layer, and they produce secretions. Those are your sweat glands and your sebaceous or oil glands. Hair is found on nearly all parts of the body except for the lips, nipples, palms of the hand, soles of the feet, and parts of the external genitalia. The visible part of the hair is called the hair shaft, and the part that is embedded in the dermis layer is called the root. Nails protect the tips of your fingers and toes from bruises or injuries. Each nail is formed in the nail root. As the nail grows, it stays attached and it will slide forward over that nail bed. Within this unit, one of the other things that we do talk about when it comes to the skin is different types of burns. Now, burns are tissues that are caused by direct contact with either chemical, thermal, electrical, or radioactive agents. Burns are classified as either first degree, second degree, or third degree. First degree burns are also called superficial, and these are the ones that are the least serious because they only injure that top layer of skin. They are mostly caused by brief contact with dry or moist heat and spending too much time in the sun or an exposure to a chemical. Second degree burns are also called partial thickness burns. These are deeper burns that cause damage to the epidermis and part of the dermis. They're caused by direct contact with flames, hot liquids, or chemicals. Symptoms will mimic first degree burns, but they also have fluid-filled blisters that will appear. Third degree burns are also called full thickness burns. In these burn types, the epidermis and the dermis layer are destroyed and some of the underlying connective tissues are damaged. These may be caused by corrosive materials, flames, electricity, or extremely hot objects. And our last chapter that we're going to talk about is chapter 10. So for this week, you have chapters 4, 5, and 10. Chapter 10 is referring to the musculoskeletal system, which functions to support your body and provide movement to body parts and organs. This will include things like your muscles, bones, joints, and other related structures like tendons and connective tissue. Muscles are composed of contractive cells or fibers that provide movement of an organ or a body part. Muscles contribute to the posture, produce body heat, and act as a protective covering for internal organs. Muscles make up the bulk of the body, and there are 3 types of muscle tissue in the body. We have skeletal muscle, which is also called voluntary or striated muscles. They are the muscles that are under voluntary control. So for example, those that are on your bones of your arms and your legs. Cardiac muscle is only found in the heart. And then smooth muscle are called your involuntary or visceral muscles. They are muscles whose action are not voluntary. So for example, these are muscles found in things like your GI tract and your respiratory tract. We don't tell them to expand and move or move foods and digest foods. It happens automatically instead of voluntarily. Bones provide the framework of your body and protect internal organs. They will also store calcium and other minerals and produce blood cells in the bone marrow. There are 206 bones in the human adult body. Together with soft tissue, most vital organs are enclosed and protected by bones. But it isn't just support and protection. The skeletal muscles and skeletal system also carry out a number of other important functions. Movement is only possible because of bones, and because those bones provide points of attachment to muscles, tendons, or ligaments. And there are 4 types of bones that we have in our body. The first are called short bones, and these are somewhat cube-shaped and they consist of a core of spongy bone. For example, these are the bones that we find in our wrist, ankles, and toes. The second one that we have are irregular bones, and these are bones that cannot be classified as short or long because of their complex shapes. Examples of this are the bones that we find in the vertebrae of our spine and the bones of our middle ear. Third type are flat bones, and they are exactly what their name suggests. They provide a broad surface for muscular attachment or protection from internal organs. For example, these would be bones that we find in our skull, our shoulder blades, and our sternum. And the fourth type are long bones. These are found in your appendages. So for example, the bones in your arms, legs, and fingers. So one of the other things that this chapter goes on to talk about is bone fractures. So a broken bone is called a fracture. And there are different types of fractures that are classified by the extent of their damage. And you can see here that there are 8 types. The first type is a closed fracture. This is one in which the bone is broken, but there are no wounds externally. An open fracture involves a broken bone and an external wound that leads to the site of the fracture. A complicated fracture is one in which the bone has broken, but it's also injured an internal organ, such as a broken rib that pierces your lung. A comminuted fracture is when a bone is broken or splintered into pieces, and we typically see this in like the heel bones if somebody has a fall and they land flat on their feet. An impacted fracture occurs when a bone is broken and one end is wedged into the other in the interior surface of another bone. And incomplete fracture occurs when there is a line of broken bone, but it does not extend through the entire thickness of the bone, and so one side of the bone is broken, but the other side is bent. We often see this type of fracture in children, as their bones are still composed of flexible cartilage. We also refer to this as a green stick fracture, just because of the fact that it's more of a twisting of the bone instead of a full breaking of the bone. And the last one we have is a Colles fracture. And this is a break at the lower end of the radius, occurring just above the wrist. We also call this a fouche, a fall on outstretched hand. All right, I'm going to give you guys a minute. What I would really like for you to do is to pause the video and try to connect these. So we have some word roots here. So we have kino, keen, or kinesio, dactyl, digit, phalango, cyto, cyano, luke, or luke, superio, osti, or osteo, hydro, lipo, and philo. And on the opposite side, we do have some terms of what those mean. So you have blue, fat, finger, movement, hair, cell, sweat, white, bone, above or upper. So what I would like you guys to be able to do, pause the video, match them up. Hopefully you have paused the video, and if you have, here are the answers to those. So kinesio was letter D, it means movement. Dactyl, digito, or phalango are all meaning finger, so that was letter C. Cyto means cell, letter F. Cyano means blue, letter A. Luke or luke means white, letter H. Superio means above or upper, that was letter J. Osti or osteo means bone, that was letter I. Hydro means sweat, letter G. Lip or lipo means fat, letter B. And phil or philo means hair, letter E. All right, guys, so for Module 2, you have another discussion board. Again, this one is going to be talking about successes and challenges. So please make sure that you do your initial posting by Tuesday, excuse me, and reply to at least 2 classmates by Saturday. I apologize. Please check your course calendar for specific due dates. And then please know that the discussion board will close on Saturday at midnight. I would also suggest going back and looking at your grade from Module 1 and seeing where you were graded, how you were graded, and any feedback that I gave you on your initial posting. The second assignment that you have this week is a dictation assignment. For the dictation assignment, it is meant to help you with your verbal communication. And being able to understand verbal communication is a really important role for any healthcare setting and any medical terminology, regardless of what field you're going into. For this activity, you need to listen and interpret what you hear. So, you're going to be given 2 patient summaries in which they contain multiple terms that you have been studying this week. After listening to the summaries, you will answer the corresponding questions. You only do have 1 attempt for this assignment, and it is 10 questions long. But the nice thing is that there is no time limit. So you can go back and listen to the patient summaries as many times as you need in order to go back and do that assignment. This week we'll also start your course projects. So for this course project, you are working with clinical notes. You'll be presented with clinical notes for 2 different patients. You'll need to review the progress note for those patients, which are written as SOAP notes: subjective, objective, assessment, and plan. Each of these components are used to record vital patient information. So a subjective will include the patient's complaint and states the patient's symptoms in their own words. An objective includes information that the provider can measure, things like vital signs, weight, or findings from a physical examination. Assessment will include differential diagnosis or a plan of signs and symptoms, a summary of those signs and symptoms. And lastly, plan will include any treatments performed, follow-up appointments needed, referrals, or other orders. So after you have reviewed the clinical notes, you will download the Microsoft Word document that is the Module 2 course project assignment template. You will fill in your answers on that worksheet, and when you are finished, you will submit the worksheet for grading. There are 21 questions to be completed. Along with that, you will need to place any references that you use. Those references do need to be in APA format. If you do not know how to write in APA format or don't know what that means, please reach out to me and let me help you with that and give you some resources. So your dictation assignment and your course project are due on Sunday, as well as your quiz and your Module 2 live classroom assignment. Again, for the Module 2 live classroom, I have posted when that live classroom is. Please make sure that you're checking your course calendar and your Teams classroom in order to find that. And then if you were not able to attend it live, please make sure that you do watch the recording and watch for that code question to appear. What you will do is put the answer to the code question in the Dropbox. All right, guys, that's what I have for Module 2. I hope that you all have a wonderful week. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please reach out to me. Bye, everyone.